Hello, hello, hello. It is Thursday, June the 12th, and it's noon. It's noon where you are, maybe. Where I am, it's actually 6 p.m. I am actually in Budapest, Hungary, at an international conference, and want to make sure that we are consistent. When I say that we're here every Thursday at noon, wanted to make sure I was able to keep that commitment to you. So it's Thursday. Time for another session of Let's Talk Power Live. Who am I? I am Dr. Tanji. And what do I do? I am the CEO and the principal consultant of Liaison Educational Partners. What do we do there? We really take time to dig into instruction, culture, and the curriculum. We have a belief that every child deserves a leader and an educator equipped with the skill set, mindset, tools, and resources to make sure they get the excellent education they deserve. So here we are in Budapest, really learning a lot. Well, wait, let me go back. I'm thankful. It's Thankful Thursday. What are you thankful for? I ask this question every week. And this week, what am I thankful for? First of all, I got here safely, and we had a little bit of a strange hotel thing, but I had a fantastic person who's a hotel manager who supported me and got the rooms all straightened out. And I'm grateful for an incredible location. And I'm grateful that I'm in a foreign country and I don't know the language, but I'm able to safely and accurately take public transportation. If you travel internationally, one of the things I would really push you to try is their public transportation. Fantastic opportunity. I'm grateful for that. One of the things I'm most grateful for is my grandson turns 6 on June 14th, and he just arrived at Disney. And my daughter let me know that they got there, they checked in, and he's singing Hakuna Matata. If you're a grandparent, you know what I'm feeling, right? So that's what I am grateful for. What are you grateful for? It's always exciting to take time to really be intentional about being thankful, for expressing gratitude and being specific about it. Oh, I'm thankful. Really stop. Give yourselves the benefit, the mental, spiritual, physical benefits of gratitude. So, what are we doing today? We are going to be, guess what? Talking about power. We've been sort of doing a power reset, right? And looking at the instructional power. You hear me talk about it over and over again. And I thought to myself, it's probably time to do a reintroduction of the power principles and where all this work came from. So right now, or in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about power in a very, very specific way. So here we are, right? And I kind of told you a little bit about what we did, what we do at Liaison Educational Partners. We take strategic movement and we really involve our partners in a 5-phase process. We center learning. So we start out with learning. We start out and move into planning. Then we move into action. And then we look at evaluation. And finally, we look at integration. We believe that process needs to be iterative. And we know that a lot of times as educators, our instinct tells us to do something. And the thing I want us to do first is be in a learning mode. A lot of times our strategies don't stick. They may not stick because we haven't taken enough time to step back and really do some critical learning and uncover, unlearn, and really get underneath some of the challenges we might be facing. And from there, we can strategize and put together the right kind of plan, put that plan into action, step back, evaluate it, see what's working, what's not working. What's working, we keep, we scale. What's not working, we do not keep, we go back through the process. And that's why we use a 5-phase process. So, you know my question, do you have your book? Do you have your book? Gonna always ask that. I'm gonna put let's put the website up here. You can get a copy of your book, Understanding Your Instructional Power, via our website. Looking forward to having you take a look at the site. Go in there, click the book. It'll take you straight to where you can order it. I always tell people this book is going to help you see your learning environment through a new lens. A lot of times, particularly with pre-service teachers, we're taught create a relationship, make sure you got strong relationships. What we don't talk about is how to do that. If you are an educator who is struggling, and I'll say struggling, or challenged by the relationship dynamics in your learning environment, and maybe you're a leader who is really seeing small pockets of relationships that really need to do some shifting. And I say small pockets because we want to start small and look at some really critical things. But you may be having pockets where you're noticing that students and educators are going back and forth and arguing, and teachers are trying to hold on to something. They may be in a control mindset. This book helps you figure out your ideas of power. When relationships are going awry, there are some power dynamics that really do need to be examined. Education is ripe and replete with hierarchical structures that need to be examined. And we talk sort of conceptually about power. What we do in this book is talk about the concept and then operationalize it. So when you are in your learning environment, your eyes are able to pinpoint where the dynamics are off and how to get them back on track. That is why I say get your copy of your book. The toothpaste will be out of the tube. You can't get it back. Your eyes will be open and you will revolutionize your culture. So get your book. All right. Where else are we headed today? Let's talk about where we were where we headed now. Last week we did a refresh, right? We kind of went back and looked at some basics of our instructional power. I'm going to go through those in a minute, but where we're headed this week, we're going to be talking about power through pausing. That's where we're headed now. We're going to spend some time today talking about the power of a pause. Then next week, we'll be looking at purposeful planning, practices to promote agency, and then possibility thinking. As we move forward over the next few weeks, and the teachers are really getting into their mindset or the vacation mindset, we all know that there's this myth out there that, oh, you're a teacher, you have your summers off. Let's stop the myth right now, everybody. If we were in person, I would say raise your hand for how many times you've heard someone say, I want to be a teacher because I can get my summers off. We all know that's hoo-ha. We all know we do not have our summers off. And even if we're not, quote unquote, working, our minds are still in school mode. We have a vacationing mind, and it takes some time for your vacationing mind to come out of the classroom and get into vacation mode. Your mind takes time to really pause and think about where you've been over the last year and what's going to happen, what you might plan for, what you will purpose for in this coming year. So, wow, you can't really see this. And I do apologize for that. Oh, my goodness. That was not a smart decision. So we looked at last week a couple of things. We talked about the need to really look at powering down. How do we power down? What does it look like when we power down? How do we move forward? And then we talked about some strategies to get you to power down. What are some steps that make powering down a lot more efficient and a lot more effective? What I'm going to do here is, if you want a copy of this, I'll get the slide and make it better for everybody. Just DM me and I'll make sure that we get this copy corrected, because this is not good. And I do apologize for that. But anywho, when we talked about our reset last week, we also did a definition, and I shared with you my definition for this thing called instructional power. And here's what it is. Instructional power really can be understood as an educator's use of their state, district, and building ascribed job-related authority to afford or constrain access to learning. That's what it is. And we see that on so many different fronts. And that's what we talked about. So we also shared with you the environmental descriptors. There are plenty. But when I did my research that really formed this book, I came up with these four based upon the findings I had. And what I noticed is in certain classrooms, students are really moving towards this idea of empowerment, able to make decisions that are in their best interest, not just relying on the adults giving them choices, but they really do understand themselves as agentic beings, and they are in partnership, authentic, real partnership with the adults in their learning environment. That is dimension descriptor one. Descriptor two, dimension two is agentive, where the adult is really learning about their own power center, where their power histories have come from. And they're really helping the young people that they teach and lead to understand their own. And this happens across all grade levels. It's not just a middle school or a high school thing. If you know any 4-year-old or a 3-year-old, those are pretty agentic beings. They let you know exactly what they want and what they don't want. And we want to make sure when we're talking about agency development, we're not saving it for older kids. And then we have this idea of dimension or descriptor three, where there's protection, where the adult in the room, in the building, is holding on to their position. They are really leaning into ownership of the work. The environment is really restrictive in a lot of ways. It is pre-planned, pre-organized in a lot of ways as well. And there is this need to hold on to the hierarchy of the relationship between adults and students. And then dimension and descriptor four is really disenfranchising. That is the environment where young people are be seen and not heard. They are thought of as empty slates, where the adult has to really sort of pour everything into them. And they really are seen as not partners. They are seen as receptors of the adult who is all knowing and all wise. These are the stages. The sage on the stage model is really indicative of what you're going to see in a protective and a disenfranchising environment. You might see some sort of staging in the other two, but it's purposeful. It's by design. It is because it has to be, because sometimes it just has to be. But in the other two, in the disenfranchising and the power protecting, that is the structure. It is the primary description for the way the classroom is run. It is the culture of the classroom, where the adult is the center of learning in those environments. And in the other two, the students, particularly in the empowering one, they are the authentic center. And in the agency one, they're developing and it's moving in that direction. So that's what we talked about last week. Where are we headed this week? I want to really talk about this power in the pause. It's June. It's the middle of June. Schools in certain parts of the country are already out. When I was in North Carolina, school was already out. When I was in New Jersey, I still had 2 more weeks left. Either way, and there are some schools that are year-round schools, but they try to line up with summer, so they may be out as well. So right now we have a lot of kids who are out of school or getting out of school, which means educators are in a pause, right? And we know that pausing doesn't mean that it's done. One of the things, and we talk about this power in pausing, really want to make sure, and I want to highlight these for everybody and really blow this up, right? Intentional choices that connect to student identity, culture, and purpose. When we're pausing and we want to reflect on what we did this past year, that's something to think about. Where did we make intentional choices? The other thing we want to think about is, where did we center curiosity? Did we center our own curiosity about learning, about the content? And did we center curiosity about our students? A lot of times we might, and I say a lot of times it might, kind of seems like they're in opposition, but they're not in opposition. We might center curiosity about our students. because we want to build relationships. We want to know what they're interested in. We want to know what makes them tick personally, right? But sometimes we do not center our own curiosity about our own content, particularly if we have been teaching for a number of years. We think, I know this content. I've been doing this content for years. I don't need to be curious about it. Want to challenge us in this time to pause. The power in the pause is to think about where you centered your own curiosity. And was it about your content? Was it about you as the classroom leader, classroom partner? And how did you center that with your students? And then where were you reflective about power and how it operates in your classroom and in the curriculum? Another question to think about when we pause, like this power in pausing. And then the big thing here is redistribution of the hierarchical structures of power to get to the agentic agency and the ultimately towards empowerment. Like I said, and I've said, and when you get your copy of the book, you will see this. Education is ripe and replete with hierarchical structures that lend to power imbalances. First things first, we have an adult and we have a child. Right then and there, power dynamic differential is going to shift, right? The next thing we have is this idea that a person knows more than the other person. We then have gender imbalances. 80+% of the teaching force, the delivery mechanism of schooling in this country, 80% of that comes through the mouth of a woman. That's a big imbalance. The other part of it is economic imbalances. Educators, in some instances, have more economic privilege than those they teach. So we really want to be clear in naming that there are inherent structures of power imbalance when we think about that. So the power in the pause is to consider all of these factors. And then next, we want to really think about this other idea too. We want to think about some critical questions, right? Who had the most voice in my class? Ask that. When I asked that question to myself, I was really surprised. Even when we think we are balanced, there are students who really have more voice than others. We sometimes, particularly when the year goes on, there are times when we get tired. We're human, we get tired, and we get tired of having to pull out. And those children that save us by being high participators, we will lean into them because sometimes they rescue us. Sometimes we are challenged by how to reach a student and we get tired and we don't know what to do. And so we might lean into a student who is a little bit more voiced, a student who feels more comfortable sharing. So we got to ask ourselves that question about who had the most voice. We also want to lean into which students felt seen and who did not. We think we know, but we have to ask our students some very critical questions about the environment. And we do have some tools in the book that lean into getting inside the head of a student by seriously, authentically, intentionally asking them questions. Next question, what instructional moves am I most proud of? One of the things I was most proud of was the time when we would do those really complex moves that were layered. They would be differentiated. They would have speaking elements. They would have individual time. They'd be multifaceted. And I was also proud of those times when I stopped teaching altogether because I thought I had something clear in my head. But when I looked around the classroom, blank stare, and I was vulnerable enough to say, you know what, I can tell this isn't working. Someone help me help you. I was most proud of those because I could step out of the way and ask for help. So did you ask for help this year? I don't know. Something to think about when we take the power in the pause to sit back. Maybe you are a journaler. Maybe you are someone who talks into a microphone and you record your reflections on the year. Either way you do it, the power in the pause is getting to these kinds of questions. And then Where do we give that power away? And by giving it away, this might sound a little bit odd. By giving the power away, what I think I really mean is, where was I willing to be vulnerable enough and step out of that hierarchy and really work with and partner, right? And if you are moving into a more agentic environment, this question is very, very critical for you. And then, where were places where you really leaned into your personal power protection? That's really important to consider. And the last question is, where did I, where did I say, what did I say versus what did I signal? And a lot of times we say one thing and signal something completely different. That's an important question. Hence it's in red, hence it's bold. Want to be tapping into the reflection of, what am I centering, even though I might be saying something else. I might have two ideas running. And I say it this way: in education, we are trained to say, oh, I believe every kid can learn. Research by Howard, Dr. Howard, I think it was 2005, maybe a little bit later than that. He said, while we say we believe every kid can learn, we actually don't believe it. And research has shown that we don't actually believe every kid can learn, but we're so trained to say it, it's a knee jerk. So as you are thinking about your power in the pause to get under the hood and kick some tires in your pedagogy from this past year, ask that critical question: what did I say versus what I signal? Am I leaning into, familiar platitudes, or am I pushing to really get down to the power of agency development and empowerment? So those are some critical questions to think about. So let's talk about resting to realign. We want to be mentally active. Now, you're going to get a point in this summertime break, whatever the summertime break is, even if you are working another job. You might be running camp. You might be a barista. You might be running a business on the side. Any of those, you're going to be mentally active, but we really do need that mental activity to get you into a resting space so that you can realign. When the year comes, you're ready for it. And then do some emotional recalibrating. You want to be emotionally recalibrating. There were some tough times this year. We all had them. What were yours? How can you sort of disembody for a little while, step out of that place, ask yourself some of those critical questions so that you can emotionally recalibrate and get that resting? And then do some strategic scanning of yourself, scanning of the year, thinking strategically about, where were your trigger points and how did you handle it? One of the exercises in the book really walks through a process of really thinking through, what are some of the triggers that hit you, that cause you to rest and sort of lean into your default buttons, where there is a default center in your brain. And if you do not know your power triggers, those things, those events, that language a child might use, that tone a child might use, if you don't know what those are, when it happens, you're going to hit the default button because your brain is on automatic. And in the book, we really do lean into how to disrupt the automaticity in your brain that leans into some of the harmful practices. Because here's what I know. I know there is not an educator in the world that gets up in the morning and says, this is the day I want to harm someone else's kid. It doesn't happen. And in the book, we really do lean into understanding your instructional power to disrupt some of the automatic ways in which we respond to students. And because we need to tap into and really critically analyze how we learned about power and how we handle power, we really need to dig into that because it's going to help us disrupt our patterns of behavior. And so, why do we need to do this? Well, a couple of pieces of research on here. It really is important because structured reflection improves instructional decision making. When you are intentionally reflective of how you have handled the good situations in your learning environment and some of the challenging ones, it primes you to really make strong instructional decisions going forward. And a lot of times we're going to learn more from the situations we mishandled than we are from the ones we handled well. So get into that power this summer, that this break that you're going to be having, the power to pause, get into that to really strategically reflect. So going forward for the coming year, you're able to make instructional decisions that are better. And then informal reflection strengthens your identity and your confidence. That's Pharrell 2015 came out with really thinking about what does it mean to develop a teacher identity. When we take time to step back and reflect, it builds our confidence as an instructional leader. For me, in this instance, the instructional leader is the one who leads the classroom. When we do that, we can build our own individual efficacy because, again, we are looking at the ways in which we may have made some mistakes. We can analyze those mistakes, get under the hood, kick the tires, ask strategic questions. Why did we make that? What was happening? How can I avoid those responses later on? And then, according to Zaretta Hammond, we learn that reflection is a neurotransmitter, right? It helps us build the neurotransmission process. We want to make sure our brains, that we, as we direct our brains to have the disruption of the automaticity that often creates negative experiences. And what we can do, what we do learn and know about the brain is you can build neural pathways, right? That your brain has this neuroplasticity, and it allows you to grow neural transmitting pathways inside your brain. And reflection is a critical process to do that. One of the things I know about your brain is it actually doesn't want to think too hard. Well, we want to make sure we're thinking, and reflection helps us do that. And so, what are those things that help us fuel the empowerment? Some feelings. We want clarity so we can build confidence. We want purpose so our reflection is meaningful. We want curiosity so we can have innovation. And we want empathy for deep relationships. These are those feelings that are going to really help us as we pause. Lean into these, right? Lean into these. Maybe you're going to the beach. The power in your pauses, that clarity, thinking through purpose, thinking about curiosity. Where do you need to build some empathy? Maybe you're not going to the beach. Maybe you're going somewhere else. Maybe you're just going to stay home, but you can still take some pause time and do these activities as well. And so I know we talked a lot of today around the classroom leader, and this is just a very quick leader's pause. Next week, we're going to dig more into the leader's pause very specifically. But here are 3 big ideas for leaders. Number 1, are we creating the conditions for teacher empowerment? A snowball rolls downhill. If teachers are empowered, they're going to do the same thing in their classrooms. It is a rare teacher who is going to defy leadership. Are our systems equitable or simply efficient? We need both. Are we modeling reflection and power literacy? As a leader, do you know your own power triggers? Do you know how you learned about power from your home life, from your social environments as a child, then when you learned about it as an instructor? And then what were your leader power centers? All of this matters as a leader. And so let's go back. What have we talked about this week? We have reframed rest as an act of leadership, not laziness, defined the vacationing mind as mentally active and strategically reflective. We looked at why structured reflection improves instructional clarity and teacher identity. Named the emotional companions of empowerment, that clarity, purpose, curiosity, and empathy, and then asked reflective questions to support power aware planning. As you step out of the year, these questions of clarity, of purpose, of curiosity, and empowerment are going to set the stage for you to start planning for the next year, and that's going to come so fast. And then we invited the school leaders to pause and reflect on their own identity and where they're coming from as well. That's what we did today. We did a lot of work today in a short time. Where are we going next week? So as we think about the next coming week, we're going to turn into a little bit more leader work, and then we're going to get into this idea of planning, right? Reclaiming power through planning, because the summer is going to be over faster than you want it to be, and we don't want it to sneak up on you. So here's what we got: what planning with power really means, right? Then how to disrupt autopilot teaching cycles, because we go on that cycle. And then why reclaiming your why is most radical plan, and then tools for aligning your planning and your values and your vision. That's where we're headed next week. But guess what? I'm so excited. I've been talking about Instructional Power 101. It is live. The link is right there. We have our early bird special going. The course is $99, and you get $10 off from now until the end of the month when you use this link. And we are just thrilled to have you join our 7-module on-demand learning experience, one of a kind. Oh, you know what I forgot to ask you to do? Number 1, get your book. I've asked you to do that. But when you get your book, I want you to please take a picture with your book. We want to see you with your book. And then tag us on all your social media as Instructional Power. I forgot to have you do a like, a share, and a subscribe. Subscribe to our channel. We want to get people talking about instructional power. Power is a real thing. Please like it. Please share it. Please subscribe. And if you're so inclined, we'd love to have you leave me a comment. Until next week, this is Let's Talk Power Live with Dr. Tanji. Thank you.